we're going to continue because, you know, time is of the essence today with Margarita Gomez from STEM Academia Colombia, who's going to tell us a bit about how she's done this in Colombia.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the parts of the project in Colombia, because other partners will talk about the other goals that are involved in this project. And as it has been mentioned, Mexico and Colombia have a lot of things in common, so maybe we're going to see things that are very similar from Claudia said, but I will try to be short and very concrete. So just to mention that it is really a group of partners that are working in Colombia. It's not only the Academy of Science, but also STEM Academia and Universidad del Rosario University, and they will talk a little bit more about what they're doing. But I decided to put this slide to show that it is important to understand that partnerships are relevant for this kind of project. It is a medium-sized project, but it's still very ambitious. And if you want to do something with good quality and to really have different approaches and to get to more people, you need to work with partners, and it is very important to start identifying those partners to work with. So they're going to talk later. I'm not going to say any more about this. What we do and what we are part of the Academy of Science in Colombia, Colombian Academy of Science. Is like every Academy of Science in every country. It is made by a group of scientists that is an NGO who wants to promote science in the country, and also it consults the government in topics related to environment, to energy, but also education, and that's why we're doing this work at the Academy of Science. And the program itself is called STEM Academia. It's the program that is devoted to work with K-12 or primary, secondary school teachers and schools in general to promote science education, mathematics, and technology too. So that's who we are. And our role in this project, in this ALEC project, was, as Claudia mentioned, basically the two main objectives of the project: adaptation and production of educational resources, and teacher training or teacher professional development. So I'm going to talk about those objects because those were the ones that we were committed to and the ones that we have results to. So the first thing was to adaptate the resources, and for this we started with the things that OC already made, that has already published. And the point is, you don't really, or at least we saw that in Colombia, you don't really need to adapt a lot of the content because there's a lot of things that are really global, and the science is basically global. But what we needed to adapt was the way we deliver those contents and those resources to teachers and how they are mediated to be implemented in classrooms. So the idea was to take these resources that are really good in quality. As you mentioned, there's not only the guides, but a lot of multimedia resources, and to put it in a context that are more accessible for the teachers that we have in Colombia. So the other thing that we had in mind when the adaptation was going on was how is the profile of those teachers in Colombia? That is not the same as the teachers in France or in Mexico or in Mauritius, I don't know. So there's something that we needed to think about. And then we wanted to make the resources part of the professional development, like not something that is just hang somewhere online or some book that you have in your library, but something that is part of your daily teaching activities. So the idea was to have these resources very, very rooted in the professional development activities. And with these three considerations, we adapted the resources and also the professional development. It's hard for me to talk about those things separately because for us, it's the same thing. You can't have professional development without resources, but resources by themselves are not enough. So what we end up doing was professional development that is very situated in the practice of those resources, in the use of those resources. And as Natalie mentioned, at the beginning it was to be only for face-to-face, but then COVID appeared in the world, so it was online. Now we finally reached a balance in blended professional development that for us has been very useful. It allows us to reach more teachers. It's also more efficient in time. We live in a very big city, so every time people need to move from one way to another, from one place to another, is very complicated. So this kind of give us a little bit of more space. But also we wanted to do something that is kind of intensive. It's 45 hours, at least, maybe between 45 or 60 hours of total training. And it's not just in 1 week, but with time to go to a classroom, implement, reflect, and think about it, use it with the students, and come back and use that information, that evidence in the next step of the training. Also, we saw that because of the profile of the teachers that we work with, it was very important to have a very strong scientific content in the training. You have mentioned this all the morning, so it's probably not only a Colombian problem, but to deal with the complexity of the scientific things that are involved in climate change is really challenging for many teachers. And in countries like Colombia, and I guess Mexico is the same thing, it's very hard to teachers to teach this kind of content if they don't have the knowledge. So the idea was to really focus on a lot of science and good science, and that's why we had the reviews and we used different sources to be able to say, okay, this is really well done in a scientific way, but also to address common misconceptions of students and teachers. We have to say that most of the teachers in Colombia have the same misconceptions that the students have about climate change, about greenhouse effect. So the idea was to address those misconceptions, like explicitly talk about it. Like kids may think this, and this is normal, it's a common misconception, but you need to address that in order to have a more effective teaching activity. And also, and we were discussing this with my partners before, we wanted to have a more, like a global perspective. For countries like Colombia, there's I think, good knowledge of local things, and people are very concerned about local environmental problems. So, for example, things related to water or pollution. But I think we lack a global perspective of the problem, and since climate change is also a global problem, it is important to understand, yes, we have things that are going right there in our schoolyard, but those things somehow are related with things that happen in China, or things that are happening in the ocean kilometers away from us. So we wanted to include that. And finally, what we decided to include in this adaptation was not for students that much, but mostly for teachers, topics that are a little bit controversial or for debate, because there has been some tradition in Colombia of environmental education to say this is the good things to do, this is the bad things to do, but there are not easy answers in climate change, and some things are quite complex. This morning we were talking about the trade-off between development and really climate change education, and how do you use your decision in climate change, but if you have problems to access electricity or any kind of thing. So the idea was to show this complexity is part of the problem, and that in some way you need to train or teach the students to be able to deal with complexity. So we include 5 different debate cases about, for example, energy in Colombia or biofuels. That there's no like good answer or perfect answer, and it depends on many things. So the idea was to include some controversies. And well, those things you already said. I think now the numbers are a little bit bigger because it's a new slide, but we developed the course online. Also, the protocols for face-to-face workshops, and the protocols for these controversies and debates spaces. We are doing those online by Zoom, like everybody now, but it's something you could do face-to-face too. And we developed the lessons, very well-detailed lessons to be carried on the school, so teachers that want to do that can just read and follow the step-by-step lesson. Now we have 10 of them. It was 8 at the beginning of the project. Now there are 10 because we included some topics about eco-anxiety and adaptation. And also we develop a lot of videos for the online course. And this is very interesting and something that we didn't expect it, but the idea of the videos was to show the science behind the concepts to teachers. That's it. And suddenly teachers start to ask, can I show this to my students? I want to show this in class. And now they are using those videos also as resources for the students. So it's very interesting. And finally, as the Academy of Science, we want always to promote science and to highlight the role of science and scientists in climate change action, and to show that understanding the science of climate change and developing solutions for energy or climate change mitigation is very important. So we wanted to show how scientists in Colombia are working in climate change mitigations, or different lines of research. So we developed some videos with interviews of scientists, and these are called Detectives del Cambio Climático, as climate change detectives. And the idea is that as children interview scientists and they talk about what they do and why what they do is important for climate change actions. One of the scientists is actually Benjamin, that is going to talk later, but the idea is to show different careers in science and technology that could help to fight, to face climate change. So we have biologists, we have also engineers, we have people that do palynology with pollen. So it's very interesting, and teachers and students really like to hear about how people using knowledge and using science could help to understand and maybe act on climate. So that's also something that is available. All those things, as you mentioned, are open resources for everybody to use. And teacher training, basically the same thing. I already mentioned the characteristics of our professional development, so I'm just going to show some numbers. This is what we are doing now in Colombia. It's not really important, the map, because you don't know Colombia, but what is interesting is that at the beginning we had focused different parts of Colombia, but things change because COVID, because political things. So it's a different map, but still we have, I think, a big coverage of the surface of the country. For now, we have 600 teachers already trained. Training means that they finish the 45 hours. And there are now, currently during this semester, over 300 teachers in training. And as well as in Mexico, the idea was to develop some projects. Not because we want the schools to change the world, of course, it's hard for them, they're just kids, but to be involved in some kind of action that shows them that they can do something, to show them that they can be involved in things that really have some impact. And there's about 450 school projects. Some are already ongoing, some are more for the future, they're just planning, but it's very interesting to see that. And this is just an estimated, because it depends of the size class, and it's not really something evenly distributed in Colombia, but there's a lot of students already doing this. This is, as Claudia showed, students using the resources, talking about climate change, understanding the climate system, using the videos. So it's very nice because, as Natalie mentioned, this is something that happened in less than 2 years, because we lost almost 2 years with COVID. So things are going very, very fast, and we are happy with that. Just to finish, just a small analysis of what we have done in terms of strengths. I think the idea to have a very structured professional development program is very important, to have something that is coherent with what we have learned about what the teachers need, about time, about extension, with resources that support it, with videos that can be used also in classroom, and the idea that we're already having action projects. But weakness, there's always weakness in some projects, and I think it's something that is important to think about is how to follow up what's going on, especially in long term. Because you can follow up the teachers for a while, and there's a community of practices, but it is, at least in Latin America, very common that you lose the the trail of what's going on. So that's something that is actually but it could be very expensive. So you need money to go to the schools, to visit the class, to keep the teachers interested. So that's something that we need to work on. And also the assessment of the students. As you mentioned, we have an external evaluation. That is great, but it's focusing mostly in teachers, not in students. So we really don't know if the things are actually impacting where we want to impact. It is what it is. It's super expensive to assess students. Also, we have very different contexts of curriculum and ages where we're working with. But it's awareness I need to highlight. Also, there's a lot of opportunities. I think it's the same here. And in Mexico, there's a growing interest in understanding climate change. Like at the beginning, we mostly work with science teachers because it's a very scientifically focused program. But now we have more and more teachers from the languages or the humanities that they want to understand the science behind climate change and how to teach it. So I think it's a good thing that people are getting more and more interested in climate change education. Colombia has a very, well, not very, but a flexible curriculum that allows us to enter by different points of entry with climate change. So you don't need to have it written in the curriculum to do it. That's very important. So you can do it. Of course, if it's written in the curriculum, it will be easier, but it's not really that if it's not, you can do that. And, well, predecessors are the COVID, of course, but especially funding for the scale-up, as David mentioned, the idea is to start with this small, medium-sized project, but to scale up. But since COVID, this has been, at least for Colombia or for my organization, very hard to find money to this scale-up, especially from the government, because they're using the money in other things, I guess. And it's a very complex thing in Colombia that students and teachers have very low science proficiency levels. So it's sometimes hard to make them understand or to try them to understand some of the scientific concepts because, as general, the country has a very low level in science competences. So it's always a challenge, and you need to go, maybe you start with something, and then you have to go back and try the basic science in order to get to that specific context. But, well, it's part of the project. That's it. Is time enough? So thank you so much.